Today we have a very, 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 very special guest. He's definitely regarded as one of the best lyricists probably ever. And he has a very interesting story. The album is incredible, so please pay attention. Please take notes. Get all the jewels that you can. Oh, who got their phone on? Who is it? It was you right there, because he was looking around, acting like it wasn't you. It's all right, though. So y'all make some noise for Detroit's own Royce 5'9".
Don't take my focus to places where I put fakers in comas longer than daytime soapers. Any calendar day, I'll Halloween like late October. I'll bury these beats up under the devil's playground. Playtime's over. You're fine, dog. I can't deny it. She trying to be
hey, everybody.
on the side. I ain't buying it.
How y'all doing? Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
So, as I was like preparing to talk to you, there was just like so much going through my mind because, I mean, over 20 years in the game, so much history, so much to talk about. But I really want to just focus like on the album and where you're at right now and stuff. First of all, I want you to explain your name.
My name?
Yes, your name, because there's so many meanings to your name and the numerical meanings behind it. I think like people who don't know, they need to know. I want to start off there.
You mean my name, Royce the 5'9"?
Yeah, your name.
There's no special story with my name.
I mean, well, when I was looking it up, it was like they were saying it was, because of your height. Then it was because you had a person die on one floor and your child was born on another floor.
Oh nah. I wish I was that inquisitive.
So let's clear this up.
You know what happened?
The internet has a lot of stuff on there.
It started out really boring, and then it ended up being okay. It ended up being kind of cool. But Royce is they started calling me Royce in high school because I had a gold chain that had an R on it as a medallion. So I had a friend of mine was like, "Yo, that looks like the Rolls Royce R." So he started calling me Royce, just kind of playing, and I started calling him Rose, and we ended up forming a group called Rose and Royce together, like a rap group. It was short-lived. You probably won't hear that album. And then for some reason, it just stuck. It stuck. The more people found out that I was rapping, they were calling me Royce. And 5'9", another guy that I was in a rap group with called The Main Focus in high school, we were the only two guys on the basketball team that were 5'9" on the roster, both point guards. He played back up to me, of course. I started. Okay. And we called each other 5'9". So I called myself Royce the 5'9" when I started like really taking rap a little bit serious. And there was probably maybe a year or 2 or 3 year window where I started taking it really serious. I met Marshall, and he put me on. It was like it happened so quick. I didn't have a chance to come up with a really catchy name.
So where do you think all the other stories came from?
Yeah, so when I wrote that song Tabernacle, I was just kind of thinking about everything in retrospect, and I wasn't able to draw a correlation between my granny being on one floor, my wife giving birth on another floor, that being the 5th floor and the 9th floor. Until I got sober. And then I realized that, and that's when I wrote that song. But just in terms of coming up with the name, it was just high school stuff, so.
Now, you brought up being sober. It's been, what, 8 years?
Almost 8 years, yeah.
Y'all clap for that.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about that. Like, what's been the process of maintaining so many years of not even touching alcohol?
I just got tired of it, I'm learning a lot about myself as I get older, and one of the things is I'm an extremist. I'm very obsessive compulsive, and I'm wired like an addict. I'm genetically predisposed to just addictive things, And so I started drinking when I was 21, and I must have liked it too much, So what happened was, I'm sure everybody in here knows about the effects of alcohol. It just brings on very bad decision making. And I pride myself on making better decisions because I made so many mistakes. I learned so much. Pretty much everything I know is from making mistakes, you know? So why not try to continue the good decision making, you know? And I also noticed that good things happen when good decisions get made in succession, you know what I'm saying? Like in a row, the consistency of that. And that's really the only way to build a brand, you know? So I was thinking about my career. I was thinking about, I had 3 little girls. So when I had boys, I was one way. And then, you know, once the girls start coming, it just changes things.
You have 5 kids, right?
I got 5 now, yeah.
Y'all clap for that too.
Yeah, girls are really smart. Let me put it like that. They don't miss anything. They want to know everything. They ask a lot of questions, and they hear everything. You know, so I told myself, you know, before I came into this game that I knew it was a kind of a wicked sort of industry if you engage that. And I told myself that I wanted to leave here with everything that I came with, which wasn't much, you know. So I just had this vision of myself always keeping my family intact. So I just learned that, you know, drinking, going a little crazy, it's not conducive to that, you know. Something just had to go, so I had to cut it out. So one day I just stopped. I called it a spiritual awakening. I called some close loved ones. I told them what I was going to do, and I've been taking the steps ever since. Thank you.
Royce the 5'9", Serious Pandora playback. Let's talk about the album. The Allegory comes out 2 weeks.
February 21st.
February 21st?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. They told me the 28th, but you moving it up.
They said the 28th?
They said the 28th. So
Keno! You better not be pushing my album back. He already pushed it back to the 21st.
Album sounds incredible.
Thank you.
Why'd you name it that? I mean, I had the privilege of listening to it beforehand, and it made sense. But explain to the people, one, for those who don't know what Allegory means, can you define explain what that means first?
Well, it's a allegory. It's a kind of a story. It can be a story. It could be pictures. It's a way for the writer or the creative person to bring across certain messages. Usually they fall under the category of like moral messages, and it's more of a subliminal kind of clever way to bring across certain messages. There's a lot of hidden meanings and messaging. It's an interesting way to construct, you know, a story or whatever it is that you're making, whatever kind of piece of art that you're making. So that's what made me call it the Allegory, and I got that because prior to reading, I was reading The Allegory of the Cave Theory by Plato. And prior to reading that, I didn't know what an allegory was either. So I just found it interesting that a lot of hip hop albums are like that, you know. So what I pulled from Plato's Allegory of the Cave Theory is just human programming and the importance of perspective and how crucial it is and how much of a part perspective plays in just everything in life. The way you see something, you know. So just imagine, and this is the short version. Imagine a kid just being in a cave, being born in a cave, and he can't look left, he can't look right. He's chained up, and there's like a corridor leading out of the cave, and just a little bit of sunlight is coming through. And 10 years later, you pull him out of the cave, and he sees the sun for the first time. It's going to hurt his eyes. It's going to take a long time for his eyes to adjust to the sun. Bodies of water is just going to look crazy to him. He won't know. He won't have the words to explain bodies of water to the other people in the cave. And though this is reality that he's looking at, it's not reality until he accepts it as his reality, until he sees it that way, until he is willing to open up his mind and unlearn the cave and now take in reality. His other option is he can just turn back around and go into the cave because that would be an easier option for him, even though it's a much harder and a more bumpier road, you know. So just being willing to kind of unlearn some of the things that you learn, and being mindful that we've taken in a lot of falsities, a lot of false information, and we got to take in the new stuff in order to be able to apply it, to the next generation. And I just started drawing correlations between a lot of things that he talked about in that with how the record industry is set up. You know, they actually thrive, like the companies actually thrive off of the lack of knowledge that the young artists have coming in. You know, they get them young. A lot of record executives, you know, they follow suit. You know, some of them come from off the streets, and they get the kids while they need money really early, and they get their publishing from them, you know what I mean, for a small amount of money. And, you know, that's the equity, you know. I graduated high school. My dad told me to go to the Army. Nobody ever expressed the importance of ownership to me, you know. So, you know, filling out an application was like a normal thing for me. But I had friends from other cultures who wouldn't even consider filling out an application. I know people who go from business to business to business to business. Even the guys I used to drink, some of the guys I used to drink with, you know, they'd be just as irresponsible as me, but they own something. They mess up the business, and then just go start another one. No problem, you know what I mean? This is America, you know, while we're running around filling out applications. So, you know, and I feel like history just continues to repeat itself if we acquire this information and don't share it, you know, so.
Y'all clap for that. He dropped a lot of jams right there. I think that's a perfect segue into Tricked.
Okay. I'm shooting a video for that in a couple of days.
Okay.
Tricked is how do I explain Tricked?
I think you just explained it right there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a song. I told myself, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said, yo, we've been tricked. We've been tricked into thinking like a lot of things, and we just sat and we talked about all of the things that we've been tricked into thinking. You know, and I just pointed out some of the some of the things that I thought were the main ones on the song. One of them is just thinking that we are against each other in some way. You know, like, I'll use Crips and Bloods for an example. Crips and Bloods kill each other. You know what I mean? Like, and like, if I call somebody my brother, I'm automatically like, oh, here we go, Hotep, here comes the woke guy. But no, we are brothers, my sisters, you know what I mean? And you start to realize that when you start doing research. You start doing research and you start learning things. And another thing that I point out on there is just I'm becoming a universe hippie as I get older. I'm becoming a universe hippie. So I personally don't feel like that I was put here to do really bad things. My karma is instant, you know. So I just thought it was strange that I was expecting to be successful with some of the things that I was doing. You know, I'm a firm believer that you get out of it what you put into it. You know, and a lot of the people that I had around me when I was drinking every day, I can't just blame them. I got to blame myself too, because I feel like I was putting out a lot of energy that was kind of attracting that. You know, I thought the police was like profiling me when I was getting pulled over by the police every single night. And then when I got thrown in jail, I thought the judge was being a racist. And then when I stopped drinking, I stopped getting pulled over.
That simple.
That simple. That simple. So I'm a firm believer that, you know, you get the energy back that you put out there. You know, if you think positive thoughts, if you do positive things. Another thing, I was wondering why I wasn't getting the love I felt like I deserved in Detroit. But it wasn't until I started showing love, supporting other people, supporting other artists, that I started getting support back. I'm like, okay, yeah. So people do want to be my friend. I just you gotta work at it like anything else.
Absolutely. Let's get into that Tricked. Sirius XM and Pandora playback. Royce the 5'9". Y'all clap for that, man, but that was a good song.
Thank you.
How many artists we have out there? How many people that do music? So when his album drops, y'all need to really go back and listen to that song because he was dropping a lot of gems, especially for artists coming into the industry. So you've had an incredible career for over 20 years, and you said before that you've learned a lot through your mistakes. What are some things that you feel like you've done well, though, throughout your career?
Yeah, I didn't want you to think that it's all bad, because a lot of the mistakes I made, who's the artist in here? You guys are going to make them. You're going to make them too. Unless somebody gives you the information. But it doesn't mean you're going to listen. I didn't listen anyway, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not real good with cliche advice. Save your money. To me, that's bad advice. That's bad advice. Because you're not putting any perspective with it. You're just telling me to take it from where it's sitting at, and you're telling me to just put it somewhere else. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna need it one day, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I think the focus should be what to do with the money. I think now we're getting somewhere. Now that's real information because it turns into an anecdotal fact. It turns into, oh, here we go, cliche advice. So I think I made all of the usual mistakes. But I'm just happy the way that I bounced back from all of them. Like I bounced back from all of them. And I think it's okay to make mistakes as long as you can bounce back and as long as you can use it and pull some kind of a positive out of it. I've done some bad things. But somehow I've managed to turn them into good things, and I made my mind up that I wasn't going to continue to just do bad things all the time. And, so far, some things work, some things don't, and it goes back to perspective. Like I said, I don't kick myself over things not working the way that I thought it would work. I just try to find whatever the jewel is in it. There's always a jewel in something, and then I also use everything to apply it to the next generation coming, the younger artists coming up. And, just that perspective is everything. I view everything like to expect to get everything, to expect to have everything, to just live your life like you're just gunning for everything. You implying that you're willing to lose some things, and it's just the yin and the yang. Everything is the yin and the yang. It's the good with the bad. You have good days, you have bad days. I don't trip over the bad days. I don't trip over the bad years. I don't complain unless I'm talking to Keno. You got to have one person in your life that you can complain to, maybe two. Right. I do my complaining to them. Other than that, man, it's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to have kids still interested to hear what I got to say. It's a blessing to have a son that's an artist. It's a blessing to be here. I'm sure you guys got plenty of things you could be doing right now, and I just appreciate that, so I kind of moved that. I just moved that way.
Definitely appreciate you. You mentioned earlier that you felt like you weren't getting love from other artists, particularly in your city, but it changed. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy that you say that because, like, looking at your albums, the features that you have on there, and I give you credit because you get a wide variety of features. There's a lot of diversity. Mm-hmm. You have underground artists, you have mainstream artists, you have artists from all different coasts. And not everybody can pull that off. So why do you think you're able to do that consecutively?
Because I realized everything that I've been saying kind of like a while ago. When I felt like I wasn't getting love from artists in my city, that was like album 1 and album 2. Probably maybe after about album 3, album 4 is when I started to mature a little bit and I started to realize you have to give to get, and I just started moving a little bit different. I started forming a lot of alliances. I just kind of start limiting the negativity. And as I got older, it less. Now I'm just zen, you know what I mean? But in terms of just having underground artists, established artists, some big famous artists, I feel like I'm at a point now where I'm just coasting, like I'm almost on autopilot, I don't force things. I try things, but I don't force things. I don't trip at all. You know what I mean? So actually finishing projects is where I find my fulfillment. So that's the celebration. So it's never about the numbers. It's never about anything like that. So I feel like once you reach a certain age and once you reach a certain level of, not even level, but once you reach a certain point where you've been around in the business for a certain amount of time, you now have a responsibility to help the younger guys. So I told myself I wanted to use my platform to kind of shine a light on some of the guys that's coming up that I think is nice, that I think people should hear.
Who you checking for?
Oswin Benjamin.
I like Oswin.
Yeah, Vince Staples. I had YB and Corday on the album, but I lost them at the tail end. Like right before I was about to put it out, I couldn't get them cleared because it's indie, the politics. Yeah. But he's one of my favorite. I like a lot of guys, so I just felt like I wanted to use my platform because what's happening now is like everybody's putting everything in the categories. They're dividing everything up. So the guys that can rap, the labels are trying to like push them away from that because they feel like that's not what's popping right now. When really it's not separate. Right. So what's happening is the guys that are like really commercial and they're doing things that are doing big numbers in the very, very beginning, those guys are looking to us, the lyricists, and I use air quotes, they're looking to us to stamp them. You know what I mean? So there's a certain audience. They feel like if they get validated by us, then they'll be respected by the lyricists. You know what I mean? So I kind of wanted to use my platform to kind of bridge the gap between the two. I did it with the Prime album as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like that's all we can really do is take steps. Instead of kind of like sitting around and complaining about the state of things in hip-hop, just take the steps. Like there's some people that feel like they can't like J. Cole and 21 Savage at the same time. Thank God they got record together so you can understand that it's just all hip-hop. It's all one thing. You know what I mean?
Y'all clap for that. So speaking of collaborations, you got one of my favorite artists who's actually lives down here. So I already cared on that Black Savage song. So I want to play that.
Okay.
And let's play it all the way through because I want everybody to hear all of the artists on that one. So it's you, So I Already Kid, Side the Prince, White Gold, and T.I., right? We can get into that?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. Black Savage, Royce 5'9", Sirius XM Pandora playback.
Thank you.
That was hot right there.
Thank you.
So one of the other things that really stuck out about the album when I was listening to it, and we actually talked about it in the back, were the skits. And you mentioned, and I agree with you, that skits are kind of a lost art on the album. Either the skit will just be a filler, doesn't really make any sense, there's not a message behind it, but you have multiple skits, and they really, to me, they help supplement the whole story of the album itself. What's your creative process behind your skits? And we're actually going to play one, too.
Yeah, you know what? I do a lot of skits when I'm working on projects. It just depends on how it goes. Like with this particular album, I didn't know I was doing an album, so I always say that this is the first album that actually happened to me as opposed to me setting out to do it. I can't do an album without skits. I can't even do it. So when it comes down to it, I mean, the actual process to answer your question is just like I'll try anything. Like it just depends on what the album is about, what spot on the album that I want to put it. I'll try anything. And I've made a lot of bad skits that just didn't make the cut. I'll try anything just to see, if something works. But I think I got that just from being around Dre. He was like the first person that I actually worked with in the music business, the first superstar. And we were working on The Chronic at the time, The Chronic 2001. So just being around for that process and what I took in from him was just, I only know one way to make albums, It's very difficult for me to just go in and make like 9 songs and then just be like, yo, this is the 9 songs. It just got to feel, it just had to feel cohesive. The continuity has to be there. And of course, I'm gonna overthink it. I'm gonna be super nitpicky, But I also feel like too, to add to it, I also feel like some of my favorite albums in the history of hip hop have skits. Yeah. A lot of the classics have skits. Yep. Yeah.
I think Redman was notorious for like his funny skits.
Beautiful skits.
Yeah.
Beautiful skits. I mean, you know, it speaks to the imagination of the artist that's making it. You know what I mean? Like when you hear skits on an artist's album, then you know he probably was that silly kid in class in the back of the classroom doodling, drawing crazy pictures. I used to draw heads. I used to draw heads and like people with like fades, high top fades. Yeah. While I'm supposed to be learning, I'm just drawing faces and stuff like that. So
let's play one of the skits. You know, I think one of the more powerful ones was Miss Grace. Let's go ahead and play, and then we'll talk about it.
Miss Grace, what kind of round are you in?
Man.
I love that skit.
Are those the conversations that you have with your daughters?
Yeah, right. My father would be like, Dad, put those guns down. Stop playing with me. Yeah, no. But you know, those they inspired me to have more conversations with my daughter, though. They inspired me to start looking and being more cognizant of those teachable moments, because they happen all the time. You know, I grew up in the kind of household where my dad he's a great man. He's a great man. He's a disciplinarian, you know, so he was really good at letting me know when I did something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, he was real good at, you know, like my mom, I'm telling your daddy when you get home. I grew up in that kind of a household, but I'm not so sure that I remember so many times where it was like he sat me down and just taught me something, you know, and it's a great way to bond. It's a great way to bond, and children, I mean, they'll listen to anything, you know what I mean? Like I can tell my son, jump off of a bridge. He'll do it. You know what I mean? Like you can turn them into soldiers if they respect you. They have no reason to not trust you. And those are the perfect times. You know, like I've watched kids learn how to box, and just that lack of fear. They're not afraid of nothing. You know what I mean? Like they haven't learned that yet. So that's why they always say, you know, the best time to teach kids when to swim is when they're young, and just stuff like that. So. I just want to get the ball rolling and get them taking in information and being used to taking in information and used to processing it and learning to apply information and just always being aware. You know what I mean? Because you can just be roommates with your kids, and everybody can just be in the house on autopilot. You know what I mean? Like, and then, you know, they come home with bad grades and it's like, you're on punishment. That's not necessarily parenting, you know, so I got to a point where if I didn't teach my son something, I don't just assume that he knows. You know what I mean? You didn't know that? You didn't teach me that. You know, so I just try and teach when I can.
You actually do talk about your dad on multiple songs. And that's one of the songs I actually want to get into, the last song on the album, Hero. What is like the dynamic relationship with your father? Because, you know, for me, like I hear it's like he was a disciplinarian, but he was a hero at the same time. You looked up to him. So I want you to explain that before we get into the song.
Yeah, I look up to him. And my dad, okay, there was a lot of things that happened growing up. When I was growing up, some of the things that my dad did, just disciplining, would probably be considered child abuse today. You know, so it made me stronger. It made me aware. It made me very respectful. So it didn't do all bad. But it was traumatic. So I didn't necessarily realize it because I grew accustomed to suppressing feelings really early. So I don't think that I ever really dealt with an emotion as a child. I thought that taking how I feel and just placing it over there and kind of moving it out the way and not paying it any attention, I thought that was how, you know, I was supposed to deal with my emotions. So it wasn't until I went to therapy, when I decided to get sober, that I realized that these were traumatic things that happened to me. Some of the things that I watched my mom and dad go through. And I was able to draw a correlation between that and drinking. And, you know, my first day at therapy, my therapist asked me a couple questions. One thing led to another. I said some things about my father, and the next thing you know, I'm crying. Wow. You know, so that let me know that it affected me more than I thought, and I was carrying it. And just being able to speak about it made it to where I can let go of some things. So less resentment made me able to forgive for things, even without needing an apology. You know, just being aware of my feelings and knowing what to look for and being able to identify with certain things. It helped me out tremendously. And that's kind of like what hip-hop does for me. Yeah. Writing songs, it does that for me. It's like it's a release. It's a coping mechanism, you know. And that's, you know, that's kind of what I use it for. So with my dad, for me to speak about some of the things that happened with him on my last album, very therapeutic for me. Though I thought I did it with good taste, he didn't necessarily think so. Yeah, but he wasn't mad. He wasn't mad, but yeah, I think it made him a little uncomfortable. And because my mom was the one who told me that he made some comments. And the comments that he made me feel like, well, he must not have listened to the whole album if he feels like that. Right. So I found out he didn't listen to the whole album in the beginning. So after I got to thinking, I was like, oh. So this is the first time in my life I've ever seen this man a little bit afraid of something. Okay, so you're afraid to look at your truth. You know what I mean? Because he, for all of those years, always controlled the narrative, always controlled everything. So even though I wasn't telling his story, I was telling my story, but he was a part of it. So we don't realize all the time that as creative people, when you do that, depending on who you're doing it with or about, there may not be a way to do it that they're comfortable with, because they may take it as you're airing out something that in their past, you know? So I think we came to that kind of a crossroads. And I learned a lot by that, through that process, because I don't think about anybody when I'm creating. Right. I don't think about people's feelings. I don't think about anything, because that's kind of like a distraction. You know, the time that it takes for me to ask somebody how they feel about me doing something before I actually do it, I might talk myself out of it, you know. So I didn't take that in consideration. And I think it's fair for me to be able to express my truth, but I also think it's fair for me to take in consideration how somebody else may feel. So the good thing about hip-hop and about music and about being a creative, being able to express yourself, is you can do it. You can make mistakes, but you can also correct those mistakes. Sure. Through the music and through communication. And, you know, music, a lot of times, it brings people closer. It forces people to have conversations that the two parties may not be strong enough to initiate, you know? So we turned it into that kind of situation. So my relationship with my dad is great. You know, he's still my hero. He just got this thing where he only wants me to point out the good stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. You know what I mean? It just is what it is.
Well, at least y'all talked about it. Let's get into Hero. Look what you do. It's a great song, man.
Thank you.
Sirius XM Pandora playback, Royce 5'9". Before we take some questions from the audience, you spoke about, you know, going to therapy after you quit alcohol, quit drinking. And, you know, I commend you for that, speaking on that, because I feel like a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to mental health, especially people in the black community. what do you think we need to do more as a people to bring more awareness to it and be more open about it?
Be more open about it.
Be more open about it?
Be more open about it, because the thing that I've noticed when I speak to people about it, and I know the way I felt about it prior to going, I'm speaking on therapy now. One thing that I notice is for some reason we got like a picture in our mind of what it is that's not accurate. And we think it's such a bad thing. We think it's like, that's for crazy people, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's a great way to become more self-aware. And, becoming self-aware, you can continue to improve at anything. Like, I know in the music business, they tell you, you got to pay attention to what's going on. That's how you get better. But I don't agree with that. I think you got to pay attention to you, and you got to figure out ways to make yourself better. And if you do that, anything you do will get better. So whenever I suggest therapy to somebody, and I don't suggest it to just people who have addictions. I suggest it to anybody, especially black people, because I just feel like it's not something that ever was offered to us growing up. It's like an amenity. It's like staying at a hotel and you can't use the gym. You know what I mean? You're like, oh man, forget those weights, man. All that I don't do nothing but give you a bunch of muscles. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, no, go in there and try it. Just try it. Just have more of an open mind. And I think information, it's just like with everything else. The more information you have, the more information you share, spread, people can make better decisions, sound decisions, because anybody who's just against therapy, who's never been, they just have wrong information,
It's real, man. It's real. So we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. Who has the mic? Brianna has the mic back there. Please try to keep them concise and quick.
No doubt.
Yeah, because I answer slow.
All right, real quick, man. I actually wanted to ask you, I know you're like a crazy producer right now, so I want to know what that transition has been like for you to, go from rapping to making your own tracks for your own projects and stuff like that. All the tracks you did on M's project are nuts too, man.
Thank you, man. It's surreal. Like I never really wanted to make beats. But I did know that I was gonna come to a place with the lyrics, with the pen. It's been 20 years, like I can, as far as the writing, I can give it to you however you want it. I got the words on a string at this point. You know what I mean? Like it will stop being fun if you don't figure out new ways, to just approach it or just do it. So with me, after my last album, it was so personal. I felt like I said everything that I kind of wanted to say. And I wasn't rushing anything, so I was just going to the studio, just kind of like hanging out, watching TV. And somebody made a joke about making beats. One thing led to another. I bought a drum machine, just kind of playing around. And then I got DJ Premier on FaceTime, and he showed me how to, he stayed on there with me for 2 hours and showed me how to use it. So I started using it, but I still didn't fall in love. I was just kind of messing around with it. And then my friend, Mr. Porter, came to the studio maybe a couple months later and showed me a program called Logic. I'm sure you know what Logic is. He showed me Logic. I already knew Pro Tools from cutting vocals. I knew Pro Tools. So Logic looks like Pro Tools. So once I started making beats in there, I fell in love with the process of being obsessive, right? So that turned into me making whack beat after whack beat after whack beat, and I felt like it was beating me, so I had to beat it. So everybody knows this. The only way to get really good at something is to practice. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's born great at anything. I don't care who you are and what you do. You may be born with the what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say propensity. Yeah, there you go. Predisposition to be great. But the greatness comes in just hours and hours and hours and hours of practicing. And there's a lot of bad characteristics that I have that I'm working on. But being willing to just practice and practice and practice is one thing I've always been okay with. I love it. I don't mind. It's fun. Especially if I feel like I'm not catching it fast enough, you know? Then it gives me something to do. It keeps me out of trouble, you know? And I looked up, and I was making, I don't know how many beats a day for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So a lot of people are like, well, how did you learn how to do so many things so fast? Mistakes, you know? So I just kept practicing, and one thing led to another. I started making a few things that sound kind of cool, so I started writing to them. Another thing led to another, and another thing led to another. Man, I looked up, and I had like 7 songs, and I was like, uh-oh. So I agreed to do an EP, and I was going to do an EP, but then it goes back to the skits. I couldn't figure out how to make just 3 or 4 songs coexist with each other, and it feels like a body of work to me. So in my mind, the only way to fix that is to add on to it. So adding on to it, just it's more songs now. So now I got like 10 songs, and then it was 11 songs, and then next thing you know, I was like, oh, forget it, it's an album. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I say like I didn't set out to do an album. The album just kind of happened to me, and I'm a universe hippie. So you know, like when it works like that, I feel like, you know, the universe is just telling me, oh man, stop playing, just do the album. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it's supposed to be. So, and then, you know, when I get to that place and I feel like it's supposed to be, I'm okay with everything that comes with it, you know? Like, it's just is what it is. So it just kind of happened that way. Yeah.
Got time for one more question.
What's going on? T?
How you doing, sir?
All is well, all is well. I've been a listener for a long time, since Bad Met Evil, and you've always been a premier storyteller. It's always been like what kind of held my attention to your music. In your personal opinion, what's one of the best stories you feel like you've told?
Best stories?
Yeah.
Probably Power on the Book of Ryan album. And the reason why I say that one, I've written a few that I feel are pretty good. I actually went down a story writing rabbit hole after I went to jail, because I went to jail. I was in jail for a year, and I read a lot of those hood books, you know, like the Donald Goines books. I kind of got addicted to them because those are they're great books. And like the concept of just writing fictional stories, just creating them, Nas is real good at that. I'm a fan of that. So I wrote a lot of like fictional stories, but Power was the first one that was actually based on true. You know, it wasn't loosely based, but it wasn't exactly true in terms of Thanksgiving, Christmas. But all of the details of the story and everything that happened in the story, those are true stories. I just turned it into a Thanksgiving/Christmas song. But, you know, like the incident with my dad and my brother where they got into a fight, that didn't actually happen on a holiday. That just happened because it was a Thursday. Yeah, so I definitely got to say Power off the Book of Ryan album. Yeah.
So before we get you out of here, you talked about just your evolution now. You're in a place of zen. I mean, we can feel the energy that you just, you know, you feel like you're in a good space. What is not only this year look like, the rest of 2020, but what do you feel like your next challenge or the next place that you're going? What does that look like?
You know, I kind of move like this. There's some things that I want to do, but then in my mind, there isn't anything that I can't do. So I like keeping an open mind. I try not to rule things out, set really short-term goals. And then, you know, like the little bit of like gap of time of not knowing what's going to happen excites me. It excites me because I never know. Like, I didn't plan to make beats. I didn't plan to produce. So, you know, like, I'd never thought that I would produce a whole album. You know, I didn't even think I would rap, you know, when I was playing sports. I wanted to go to the NBA, you know. So I'm gonna keep my sights set on anything that comes along with doing production. That's an exciting new part of my career. I'm having a lot of fun mentoring younger kids. It's becoming a passion to me. And it's something that I'm going to really focus on and give a lot of my attention to once I stop making records. I own a studio, it's just exclusive to me right now. But a lot of people want to get in it and work. Sometimes I let other artists use it, but I'm in there all the time. So usually when people ask, I don't have a room available because I'm always doing something. So when I stop actually making records, I want to open it up to the public, you know, and I want it to be kind of like, I want it to serve as kind of like a hub. You know, I want to try to be one of those artists that helps put the development back into artistry. You know, a lot of artists don't know how to develop. Now I'm starting to learn, since I'm making beats now, that a lot of young beat makers don't know how to develop, because the technology, as the technology expands and it becomes smarter and smarter and smarter, it's like the programs are damn near doing everything for you. So there's a program called Fruity Loops. I don't know if y'all know about Fruity Loops, but Fruity Loops damn near makes the beat for you. So, you know, like, you gotta think about it, like Quincy Jones, you know, he learned how to read string progression. He learned how to read it. Like, he can go in the studio with nothing playing, no sound, and write. He wrote the Sanford and Son jingle. He wrote it in his mind first, and then he had people come in and play it. Now, you know, kids are opening up their laptop and they're making industry quality beats easy. But the problem with that is I'm looking at a lot of tutorials and I'm noticing that every single person on these tutorials are approaching the process the exact same way. And it's starting to show in the songs that I'm hearing, like on the radio. And that's not good. That's not good for the culture. So I think to balance that out, the people who do think progressive from a creative standpoint, we need to indoctrinate this into the kids, because they're catching on to things way quicker than we did. You know, that's one good thing about technology. You know, like my daughter is 2. She pick up my phone, unlock it, go on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I couldn't even use a computer when I first seen the computer. I was like, what is this? I don't want to use a computer. You know, so that's pretty much it. You know, those are the things that, like, they're like at the top of my priority list in my mind. And, you know, I feel like the possibilities are kind of like endless. I don't think that, you know, you should have a long, super long list. In 10 years, I want to be, you know, like, I just want to, you know, make sure that I'm constantly elevating, you know, and sky's the limit on where I could be in 10 years. Kind of look at it like that.
One thing I will say, I could definitely see you as a motivational speaker or a teacher, because I think a lot of people got, you know, a lot out of this conversation. I know I did. So did you guys do it?
Thank you.
So once again, y'all give it up for Royce 5'9".
Thank you. Thank you.